to another tutorial on this course on Django, and as we are discussing project files. So the next project file we are going to be discussing in this tutorial is Settings.py, and Settings.py is again a very important file, and it basically contains the settings for your project. So if I just go on and open this Settings.py, that is right over here in the my first project directory, you can see that the first line that it says is that this is the Django settings for your project you have created. In my case, it is my first project, and it is generated by Django admin start project using Django 3.0. Now for more information, you can go on to this, that is basically the documentation, and for the full list of settings and their values, you can go on to this, and this is something not important right now. Now if you just scroll down, the first thing you can see right over here is import OS, and import OS, you already know what is the purpose of this. This is basically the settings for operating system. Then you have this base directory that is equal to the os.path.directory name function that is going to fetch you the directory. And what it's going to do is that it's going to build the paths inside the project like this using the function os.path.join, and you can then use this. And you are going to be using this in the future tutorials, and then you are going to see practically how this is going to be implemented and how this base directory is going to be used. Then if you just move down, you have this secret key that is equal to a very complex number, and this basically keeps the secret key used in the production secret. This is basically used when you are launching your website, and this is going to protect your privacy. Then you have this debug equal to true. And this debug equal to true is again something that is included in the security. So that's why it is a security warning as well, as was the security key. So what it do is that it don't run with, it is basically a warning to you that do not run with debug turned on in production. Now why it do not want you to run it in production and keep it equal to true? Because anyone that is not the owner of your website can then debug your code. So you don't want anyone to debug your code other than you. So when you're coding, you can just make it equal to true, and you can then debug your code whenever you want to and find for errors using debugging. But when you are deploying the website and you are going into the production state, what you're going to do is that you're going to make it equal to false. And this is also something that is included in the security. The next thing we have over here is allowed hosts. Now what is the purpose of allowed host? It is basically a list of strings representing the host or domain names that this Django site can serve. Now this is a security measure to prevent HTTP host header attacks, which are possible even under many seemingly safe web server configurations. If you just move on to your browser, in my case it is Chrome, and you just move on to the settings of your browser. Now in the settings, what you have to do is that you're going to search for sites. And in these sites, what you're going to do is that you're going to scroll at the very bottom. And what you're going to do is that you're going to open this site settings. And in the site settings, what you're going to do is that you're going to open the cookies and site data. Now as you can see over here that I have no blocked sites, I have no clear on exit sites, and I have not allowed any sites. So this is basically where the permissions are going to be given for any site you want to allow something special. For example, you want some site to give some special permissions to that site, or if for example some site you think is malicious, you can just block it using this block function right over here. You can just add it over here. So that is what is basically this allowed hosts is all about. And what you're going to do is that you can give permissions from here, and you're going to allow hosts right from here. So for example, you have, let's say, some admin. So what you're going to do is that he is the host, you are going to give some special permissions. So you can give special permissions to that host right over here. Then we have in the application definition, we have the installed apps. Now Django uses installed apps as a list of all of the places to look for models, management commands, tests, and other utilities. Now if you make, for example, two apps, let's say the name of the first app is my app, then the name of the second app is my uninstalled app, but only one was listed in installed apps, you would notice certain behavior. Firstly, you are going to notice that the models contained in the second app and in the models.py, it would never trigger the migration changes. You would not be able to interact with them on the database level, either because their tables have never been created, because models are what are going to allow you to create tables. Then the second thing you are going to note is that static files listed within the first app, that was my app, and in there you are going to create a static folder. In that, it would be discovered as part of collect static or the test server's static file serving. But the second app, in that static folder, what you are going to do is that its file would not be doing the same thing. Now the third thing you are going to note is that the tests within the first app would run, but the tests.py in the second app would not. Now the management commands listed in the second app would not be discovered. So really you are welcome to have folders within your Django project that are not installed apps, but just know that certain auto discovery Django utilities won't work for that application, and whatever application you want to allow, whatever application you don't want to allow, you can just add it on over here. So you can see these changes by creating two apps, allowing them certain rights over here by just specifying the name of that app over here, and then not specifying the name of the second app you have created, and then notice the changes I just discussed. Now the next thing you are going to see over here is this middleware, and it is also a part of the application definition. Now middleware is a framework of hooks into Django request or response processing. It's a light, low-level plugin system for global altering Django inputs or output. For example, Django includes a middleware component that is the authentication middleware that associate users with requests using sessions. Now Django provides various built-in middlewares and also allow us to write our own middleware. Now if you see settings.py file of Django project right over here displayed on the screens, it contains various middlewares that are listed right in front of you that is used to provide functionalities to the application. For example, if you can see right over here, the first middleware we have is the security middleware. Now the security middleware is used to provide and maintain the security of the application. Now how to create one of your own middleware is a part of advanced topics, and it will be covered in the future tutorials. For now, you only need to know what a middleware is and what is its purpose in Django. Now if you scroll down to the next thing we have is the root URL configuration, and as you can see that it is equal to my first project .urls. Now it is basically a string that is representing the full Python import path to your root URL configuration. In our case, you can see that this is name to the project which we have created, that is my first project. Now the next thing we have in our settings file is templates. Now you have already covered what a MVT is, that was the model view and template, and you have a brief idea of what it is. So a Django template is simply a text document or a Python string marked up using the Django template language. Now some constructs are recognized as interpreted by the template engine. The main ones are variables and tags. Now a template is rendered with a context. Now as you can see right over here that we also have this templates folder. So this template folders is basically going to be managed right from here. As you can see that we have this name right over here. If you would have changed it when you were creating the project and whatever you have named it, it would have been visible right over here. Since in our case we have not changed it, so it is the very same as templates. So it contains some context processors that includes Django template content processor.debug, .request, .auth, and .messages, and all of these are basically going to be used by your HTML pages or CSS or whatever you add in your templates folder. Now if you move down, the next thing we have is the wsgi application. Now it is equal to my first project.wsgi.application. So Django primarily development platform is what is WSGI is, and it is the Python standard for web servers and application. Then we have this databases, and you can see that the default database engine is set to Django.db.backend SQLite 3. Now this is basically the name of a database, that is SQLite 3, and it is basically donated right over here, and it is going to be accessed using the base directory which was listed right on the top. So databases is what's going to be also a part of the future tutorials, and we have separate sections on how databases are going to be linked with your websites and how they are going to be configured using this settings functions. So you're going to see this later as well. Then you have this auth password validators. Now validation is controlled by the auth password validator settings. Now the default for the settings an empty list, which means no validators are applied. When a new project is created with the default template, a set of validators is created. Now you can create your own custom validators, which will be covered in the future advanced topics as well. For now, just get a mild idea for how Django helps you to manage your passwords. You can see over here that we have this Django.contribute.auth password validation, user attribute similarity validators, and things like this, like minimum length validator, common password validator. Then you have the numeric password validator, and you can just validate your password for a minimum length, for a common password, and for a numeric password as well using this auth password validators. And then if you scroll at the very bottom, you have this language code, you have this time zone, you have this USEI18 and type of thing, then L110 and using use, and then TZ. And as you can see that these three are equal to true, this is equal to UTC, and this is equal to EN-US. Now if you talk about this is basically the time zone which we are going to use, and you know what a UTC is. Then we have this use I18 and equal to true. Now if you set this to false, Django will not format dates, numbers, and things like that, like calendars according to the current locale. So this is basically used for setting of dates, numbers, and calendars. Then you have the second one, L10N equal to true. Now if this is set to true, which is in our case, then the locale dictated format has higher precedence and it will be applied instant. And then you have this final one, that is equal to TZ equal to true. Now TZ basically stands for time zone, and time zone is supported by default, and as you can see that it is equal to true, which means that it is not disabled. Now if you want to disable it, you are going to set it to false. If you want to enable it, you can set it to true, and by default it is going to be equal to true, which means that the time zone is enabled in your Django project. Then the final thing we need to do or discuss before closing on with this tutorial is this static URL equals to static. Now it is the URL to use when referring to static files located in static root. Now static URL is simply the prefix, or you may say URL, that is prepended to your static files and is used by the static method in Django templates mostly. So this is basically what is settings.py, and as you can see over here that settings.py basically is going to manage all kind of settings, may it be the middlewares, may it be the password validators, may it be the time zone type of things, or you can see many other things like databases, the WSGI applications, and templates and stuff like this. So this is a very important file, and if this file was not here, you would have to do a lot of things, but Django has done that for you already by providing you with this file, that is settings.py. So both this file, that is manage.py, that was discussed in the previous tutorial, and the settings.py that is discussed just in this tutorial, they both are very important for your code to run, and you need to understand these two files to understand what is going on with the flow of code in the future tutorials. So in the next tutorial, what we are going to do is that we are going to cover the remaining files, because the remaining files are not that complex. So we are going to just wrap it up in a single tutorial. So I guess that's it with this tutorial. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Welcome you to another tutorial on this course on Django. As we are discussing the project files, so in this tutorial we are going to complete the project files discussion, and we are going to be covering the final files in this tutorial. That includes urls.py, wsgi.py, and init.py. So let's just move on to our compiler without wasting any more time, and I've already opened the files. The first file we are going to be discussing is this wsgi.py. Now wsgi stands for Web Server Gateway Interface, and it is a standard protocol used between web server and web application. Now wsgi seems to be currently the only standard choice, so you should go on with it. So wsgi is an interface. It requires a container, an application, and optional middleware. Now applications can be built directly against wsgi, or they can be built on top of frameworks such as Django that handle the wsgi a bit for you. Don't use the built-in web server in the frameworks. They are not actually designed for performance, and they usually don't integrate well with the non-wsgi parts of the server. So wsgi is basically an interaction of the application and the server. And as you can read right over here, that it says that it exposes the wsgi callable as a module level variable named application. So the callable as a module level is going to be named as application, and it is going to be something like that, as I told you, that it is the interaction between the application and the server. So the first thing that is mentioned right over here is import OS, and you know what is the purpose of this OS over here. Then we have from django.core.wsgi import get wsgi application. Now first let's discuss what is this django.core.wsgi. Now this will actually get us the interface and the Django code that will interact with the web server, meaning the application you code will be visible on the server. Then from this part, that is the django.core.wsgi, what it's going to import is get wsgi application. Now what is get wsgi application? Now the public interface to Django wsgi support, and it should return a wsgi callable. Moreover, it allows us to avoid making django.core.handlers.wsgi handler public API in case the internal wsgi implementation changes or moves in the future. So it is basically a very helpful thing from the django.core.wsgi. The next thing we have over here is the os.environment.setDefault, and then it's contain two arguments. The first one is the Django settings module, and the second argument is the name of the project along with the settings. So it says my first project.settings. Now what is the purpose of this thing over here? So basically the os.environment.setDefault line just sets the default setting modules to use if you haven't explicitly set the Django settings module environment variable. You will need to edit this line to replace my site with the name of your project package. So the path to your project module is correct. If you have named the project the very same as I have named, then it's completely okay. But if it is not, then you have to configure it accordingly. But you don't need to worry, Django will do it for you automatically. And then we have this application equal to get wsgi application. That is the final thing in this file. Now, one key concept of deploying with wsgi is to specify a central application callable object, which the web server uses to communicate with your code. This is commonly specified as an object named application in a Python module accessible to the server. You could also replace the Django wsgi application with a custom wsgi application that later delegates to the Django wsgi application if you want to combine a Django application with a wsgi application of another framework. So this was about wsgi.py, and it is also a very important file. And as I told you that this is going to handle the interaction between the application and the server. So the next file we are going to be discussing in this tutorial is the urls.py. Now, as its name suggests that it is going to be something related with the stuff of URLs. Now, when you open any website, you can always see that a URL is shown at the top of the browser window. Since we are also dealing with website development over here, so we also need some URL to whatever website we create. Now, this urls.py file is where all the stuff related to URLs is going to be handled. So if you consider this file, it has something right at the top over here. You can just go on through this. I'll just go on to the coding part. Now, the first thing is that it says from Django.contribute import admin. Now, Django aims to follow the Python's battery included philosophy. It ships with a variety of extra optional tools that solve common web development problems. Now, this code lives in the Django contribute, that is right over here specified, that says Django.contribute. So it is basically located in the Django distribution. This document gives a random rundown of the packages in the contribute along with any dependencies those packages have. Now, one of the most powerful parts of Django is the automatic admin interface. It reads metadata from your models to provide a quick, model-centric interface where trusted users can manage content on your site. The admin's recommended use is limited to an organization's internal management tool. It's not intended for building your entire front end around. The admin has many hooks for customization, but beware of trying to use these hooks exclusively. If you need to provide a more process-centric interface that abstracts away the implementation details of database tables and fields, then it's probably time to write your own views. The basic workflow of Django's admin is, in a nutshell, select an object, then change it. This works well for a majority of use cases. However, if you want and need to make the same changes to many objects at once, the workflow can be quite tedious. In these cases, Django's admin lets you write and register actions that include the simple functions that get called with a list of objects selected on the change list page. If you look at any change list in the admin, you will see this feature in action. Django ships with a delete selected objects action available to all models. Then the second line says from Django.urls import path. Now, Django.urls is what provides you the support for URLs. Now, here we have this thing named path, and path is basically a function over here. In Django, the path function is used to configure the URLs. In its basic form, the path function has a very simple syntax. It has two arguments. The first argument is route and the second argument is view. So the path function also takes an optional name argument and any number of additional keyword argument passed as a Python dictionary. The path function statements are kept in a special file that is called as urls.py. So now here, if you just look on at this function over here, that is path admin.admin.site.urls, that is located in URL patrons. So in here, this path function is the one that is presented by Django by default. The first argument, that is this admin over here, it is basically the route this path is going to take, and it will get all the arguments and the function values from the admin that I've explained earlier. Now the second argument, that is the admins.site.urls, it is basically the view. That is also something default, and it will also get you every default site URL from the Django admin file. So this is what is urls.py, and what the basic function, or you may say if I explain it in a nutshell, it is basically going to deal with the URLs of whatever website you create. So the final website site or page we are going to discuss is this init.py, and as you can see over here that this file is completely empty. So if you open this, you will see that nothing in over here, not for me but also for you. It is basically a kind of constructor in which initializations can be done. This is often not used, and the initializations are done in the places where they are needed, and this file of init.py is basically not used. But still, creating a Django project creates this file as well, which you can see if you want to. We may or may not be using it in the future tutorials depending upon the need. So I guess that's it with the Python files created. One more file we have over here, that is the wsgi.py, and this wsgi.py is basically what is provided in Django 3.0, and it says from django.core.asgi import get asgi application, and I will explain this stuff in the next tutorial, I guess. So for this tutorial, that's it. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial.